Shut up, kitty.
Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Metacast podcast. That is the podcast that explores itself, explores ourselves, and explores the self in general. My name is Ty. I'm one of your co-hosts.
And I am the other co-host that has nothing clever to say tonight at all. Distance.
Neither of us do. I'll join you on that one. I don't have a single clever thing to say. Because tonight is the Metacast movie show about You Don't Know Jack. You Don't Know Jack is a 2010 made-for-TV biopic. It is directed by Barry Levinson and written by Adam Mazur.
It stars Al Pacino, Susan Sarandon, John Goodman, and Danny Huston.
The budget for this movie was right around $18 million, and there was no box office take. It was released straight to HBO.
The tomato meter rating was 83% with an identical audience score of 83%.
It is not often that the critics and the audience agree. It's interesting to see that. So for this movie, some may call it euthanasia, some call it assisted suicide, and some call him Dr. Death. Based on the true story, You Don't Know Jack follows Dr. Jack Kevorkian as he advocates for the terminally ill and disabled patients to choose their end of life. All right, so even though I'm what we call a boomer online, I am actually young enough that when Dr. Kevorkian was active, I don't remember a lot of what was really going on. This biopic taught me a lot about that. So I'm kind of hoping that they were, accurate. I'm hoping I'm not just based off Pacino's performance, but the actual facts. But as a film, I did enjoy this watch. I feel like Pacino, Goodman, and Sarandon all gave great performances. I feel like the narrative was told in a way that kept me engaged. And overall, I felt like it was high quality. However, with a biopic like this, I do feel like the most important part is the actual story, what is actually going on. And especially with this, I feel like the most important part is the debate that Kevorkian was trying to raise. If you're familiar with our concept, you probably know that I do have a bit of a bias against organized religion. With that bias aside, it's interesting to me that the arguments presented in this film have really much to do with the separation of church and state. I think that is a big issue in the world. And I think I just think that is a very, very important thing. Of course, death is a really tough subject. It's something that we're all going to have to deal with at some point, and mortality is fucking scary. I understand that. However, I think as we've talked about a lot on this, like just because conversations are uncomfortable doesn't mean that they're not worth having. So I don't want to speak for distance here, but one thing that I've realized over doing this is exactly that. Like uncomfortable conversations have to them. There's definitely there's weight there, and there's something to be gained. So when it comes to giving this any sort of verdict as a film, like I said, I enjoyed it simply as a film. But I do think that there is a much more important thing here that is the conversation at hand. I think that the smaller conversation of patients' rights and assisted suicide and things like that, I think that is important. However, I think that all of this is just a part of the larger conversation of the separation of church and state. The more people that I think are engaged with ideas like this and having actual conversations about it, the better I think the world is. So I do think that I have to give this movie a yes, just simply for the fact that I think that it sparks the type of conversations that more people should have in the world. What about you?
Oh, yeah. I remember watching this a long time ago, and it's funny because I remember Dr. Kevorkian. I remember people talking about him in the 90s. I remember an uncle. He was married to my mother's sister, so he wasn't my uncle by we weren't genetically related, but he was part of my young life. He was an ordained minister, and he went to church. He sang in the choir there. He read his Bible often. And also, Uncle, if you're listening, it's pronounced Kevorkian, not Kevorky. I do remember him saying the guy's name wrong.
That's funny.
So, and he's not watching, he wouldn't watch the show, but I remember him having such a problem with the guy. And, you know, the Dr. Death nickname was something that he used. I remember the Barbara Walters interview. Like, I actually remember one of my parents, because I think, I want to say my dad, like, watched 60 Minutes all the time. Like every time it was on, he was watching it. So I remember vaguely the interview. But when I saw the movie the first time, and this was a while ago, when it, you know, kind of first came out, I believe I believe I was working at Blockbuster
Okay.
when this film came out.
Yeah, it
and
was
I want to
2010,
say that
yeah.
when it was, I think it was released to, well, was it on DVD? I can't actually remember how I saw it now. But I remember going back and looking at some of the details. And one thing I've noticed with a lot of biopic films, they did the same thing with the movie with the two Formula One drivers, Niki Lauda, and I forget the other guy's name.
Yeah.
The other driver. But
Was
one
the
thing
movie
that you
just called
find-
F1? Was that the movie?
No, it was. I cannot remember the name of the movie. I can.
Rush.
Oh yes, Rush. That was the name of the movie. They do this thing in a lot of these biopic films where they'll put things that people said in interviews in the dialogue.
Yeah.
There's several parts because there's a scene in and I know this isn't about that movie, but there's a scene in Rush where Niki Lauda is in a car with a lady, and he says to the lady, like, it's a funny line. He's like, I have a very good ass that can feel all the things that a car is doing underneath me. But he said that in an interview. He didn't say that to anybody, like in conversation, that anybody that made the film could have known about. And that's the same thing here. I noticed that after when I saw this movie the first time, I started to look at video footage of interviews with Jack Kevorkian, like, you know, a decade ago. And a lot of the lines in the movie are stuff that he said in interviews. So, I mean, that's really not necessary. It's a good way to create some degree of realism because it is something that they would say because they did say it.
Yeah.
I kind of like that.
Me too. It
I
at
think
least makes
that-
me feel like Pacino's portrayal was closer to reality then. Yeah.
Yeah. They at least, like, you know, grounded it, you know, a little bit, you know. And honestly, I don't know who else could have played this role other than Al Pacino. His physical appearance, the way he does that sort of weird Midwestern thing, the accent, which is hilarious because of how Pacino actually speaks. And as a film, well put together, well filmed, cool scenes, interesting dialogue. Good character development, like you really know who the people are in the film. Then once again, the issues are things that, you know, that are there to talk about, that are still relevant now. You know, it's not just like necessarily a church and state thing. I know that, like, the westernized American version of the Judeo-Christian worldview is a big part of a lot of the people's perspectives in the film. But, you know, outside of the movie, this is still like an ethical conversation to be had, you know, in philosophy classrooms and, you know, courts of law. And I'm sure there have been several groups of law students that have gotten together and done the Socratic kind of thing with these sorts of issues. So yeah, it to me is a movie that, you know, it is a little hard to watch. But it's something that we can all relate to. So before I give you my verdict, I will say, memento mori, remember that you will die. And also, yes, watch this movie. I really think it's a good one. Highly recommend it. It is uncomfortable. If you haven't experienced things like this, seen people go through this, and it's uncomfortable if you have, you know, it makes you ask the questions.
I agree. I definitely, I do think it's interesting you brought up. I honestly, I want to get into it further in the episode, but I honestly do not see the argument against it other than the religious argument. So that's like, I want to, I guess, like get into like some of the more logical stuff later, but yeah, let's go ahead and bring out Bring out spoiler Terry.
And can I put him over there?
Oh yeah, sure. You want to hand him to me? Yeah. Oh, I gotta grab him. Yeah. Oh, yeah. There he is.
All right.
And then we'll just get rid of him. Oh, get out of here. All right. Yeah, let's get into this. But that one's gonna be fun to edit. I'm excited for that.
Is that the?
But no,
I was nervous about if I was reaching on the correct side of the
yeah, no,
camera
you were.
Like,
but then I started reaching the wrong way. But yeah, well, I'll figure it out. But yeah, it is interesting to me that, I mean, in the movie, they obviously the arguments against Kevorkian are literally just the religious right. However, it's like I don't. Let's jump right into that. I do not see the actual any sort of logical, rational argument against this other than at some point it comes down to religion.
Yeah. And most of the argument that's illustrated in the film is I mean, in the movie, I don't really see anything else. Like in the film itself, that's all that we see.
Exactly.
And did you talk to your mom about the issue thing, right?
The issue thing? What is the issue thing?
Well, your mom's a nurse, right?
Oh, yes. Actually, I watched the movie with her. Yes. And then like, okay. Discussed it afterwards and everything. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I had some discussion with my mom immediately before I got online to do this. So like I talked to her about it. She and I, in our conversation about it, only stumbled upon one sort of controversy that isn't religious. But I mean, in the movie itself, that's all that we see. It really is. But I think that there's ways that, you know, it's like, okay, you can go down the rabbit hole of how do we define sound mind? How do we know for fact that there isn't any influence? Like there's all kinds of crazy places you can go and like arguments you can make that may or may not be a waste of time and might just be bogging people down. But anyone that wants to be like for it. But the one controversy that my mother and I got to when we were talking about it was when there's someone who is demented, they have Alzheimer's, some kind of dementia, they're incapable of knowing who someone is or where they are, they're not of sound mind. And I asked her, you know, like, well, what's your opinion? Like, what do you think? You know, and she said, well, I think that at least 3 physicians should examine that person and determine, you know, if this is the best thing to do, but it shouldn't be any less than 3.
And honestly, I think from the movie, I think Kevorkian would agree. He even said in the Walters interview, he's like, yeah, there should be second opinions, third opinions, but unfortunately, no one was willing to work with him. So in the reality of the situation, he didn't have that choice. But a lot of times, like the argument against certain things, we reach for like the worst case scenario and then use that as the reason. Well, like for instance, like the argument against like transgender people in bathrooms is like, oh, because like a guy's just going to put on a dress and then walk into the girl. It's like, well, okay, that is sure, that is the extreme case that can happen if you allow things. But it's like, what is the percentage of that? Is that really a big problem or are we creating a problem, I guess, is and
it's the same, like, and a lot of it tends to be what same-sex marriage, what's next? Are people going to start marrying their tractors? Like, well, wait, what?
That is not the next you just really want to marry your tractor. Like, is that?
It's like
I think you're projecting there, buddy. Like, I think.
Write your senator, because hey, no one can get between me and my tractor.
But with that being said, I do think that it is important to take things to the logical extremes. I mean, that is the test of I forget the actual like term for it, but it's like it's taking it to the absurd limits, like the absurdity, which that's always valid. That is an important thing to do, but making decisions based on those extremes tends to feel disingenuous to me sometimes.
Yeah, like it's a good way to put yourself there just to think about it. It gives you a different perspective, but yeah, once again, it's not necessarily like when actually making a decision. You know, and I think that a lot of these people, that there's this idea, and I talked to my one of the things that was said in the conversation is, I said, you know, when we were talking about this, because I want to talk to someone that has experience with this. She's taking care of old people. She's worked for hospice.
Oh, I was about to. My mom was hospice as well, so that's interesting. We both were able to talk to someone that's done that.
I think she was an OR nurse for the neuro unit. I think she did neurosurgery. I think she's worked in ICU. I do not know if she's been in the emergency department or not. But I was alive for her working at nursing homes. I remember one time, this is fucking crazy. I was like 17, and this lady, I dropped by to drop something off for her at work at the nursing home, and this lady thought that I was Bob Dole. I was like,
were you holding a pen like this? Were you just walking around like this the whole time? Like,
no, I forget what it was that she needed. Like, I just, because, you know, it's like one of those, like, oh, my kid has a driver's license, I can make him do shit now. I have no idea. Like, it was the most outlandish thing. And, you know, like, I'm understanding, like, the reality is this is someone suffering from a real brain syndrome. So, like, I don't mean to make light of that.
Yeah, of course.
But it's just the fact that someone would look at me this year and, like, imagine this, like,
and like 17-year-old you, not
yeah, like over a decade younger, without the beard, mind you.
Well, I just really want to look at what young Bob Dole looks like now. I wonder.
Yeah, I kind of wonder. But she was just like, Bob Dole, like, wait, what the fuck? It was very strange for me, and I wasn't entirely certain what was going on because I was a teenager. I hadn't really been around anybody with any kind of or what would you call it, like an organic brain syndrome.
All right, straight up,
I'd never been around.
Straight up, young Bob Dole was a handsome young man. That is, I'm going to take that as nothing but a compliment if someone said you look like Bob Dole.
Oh yeah,
yeah, good looking young dude. Oh my, yeah, look at that. Yeah, that dude was crushing pussy back in the day. Holy shit.
But yeah, it was, and the one of the questions I asked was, you know, I asked her, like, do you find it unethical that we keep people alive maybe a little longer than we should and that we make money off of it?
Yeah.
And she said that she thought it was a big problem because, you know, it almost, I asked her very specifically, do you think that it gets to a certain point where it's more about collecting the money, like making the dough, than it is about really taking care of a patient? And she said, no, I really do think it gets to the point where it's more about making the money. There's an industry, you know?
Yeah.
And I think he even talks about, there's a line in the film where he says, you know, oh, so, you know, you can't make any money off of people by keeping them alive anymore. He even says that, I think.
Which that's a great point, because honestly, like, I completely agree with the argument without even that point being introduced. When it comes just down to someone's right of choice, my mind is already made up. And it's like that to me, then like that on top of it, it's like, oh shit, yeah. It's like, not only is it just, because I think humans are very compassionate to a fucking fault sometimes, where look at the, you have to like tell fucking tourists not to help baby turtles to the water because humans just want to put their hands into shit and help because they think things need their help. I think we do that so often with even there's this selfish need to keep a loved one alive because you want them to be here longer. You know, not even considering the money. It's like, I think a lot of times, like, we just do that because we want it a certain way, not even considering what the patient may want. But the financial interest is like, that in itself is like a very good point.
There is a point, on a less serious note, there was a point in time where I was on a motorcycle. I was in like the mountains near here, and I saw this little snapping turtle in the road, and I was like, I'm gonna, you know, hop off, put my kickstand down, help this little feller out the road. So like I got off the bike and I walked over to him, and this motherfucker had like raptor claws. Like, they were like these big curly claws that were like scraping against the fucking pavement. And like I went over, like, all right, buddy, let me grab you. This dude turns around and starts like encroaching, like approaching me very quickly. I'm like, oh shit. Like I start backing up. I'm like, oh my God, I am running away from a turtle right now.
He's pushing.
It was a snapper too. So and he had like this Bowser shell too, like from, you know, the
with the
Mario
spikes
games.
and everything.
Like it was like well, you know, it was like jagged, you know. And I was like, and I was like, okay, this is ridiculous because I'm being chased by a turtle. And I was like, you know what, buddy? fuck it, I don't care. You can just die.
Yeah.
So like I got on the bike and just left. I was like, you don't want to help me, help you. That's fine. Like you're an animal. You probably think I'm a threat. Like for all you know, I am. But there's this thing that I noticed that like in the conversation too, that my mom, who's had a massive experience with a lot of this like medical stuff. I know your mom has too.
Yeah.
Who knows what kind of PTSD's lurking inside their brains.
True.
It's that.
I know that is a job that I'm not going to say could not do, but definitely would not want to.
Bro, I would be supremely screwed up if I did work like that. I'm just not. I don't. It's not even something that I think I could make myself do. But she was kind of talking. She said that if she basically said straight up to me, if I end up with Parkinson's, you will later find me dead. Like as in she was certain that she would end that shit herself. Yeah. And it's kind of like, wow, that's like heavy. Like you've seen this happen enough times. Like she worked in a neurology office. Actually, she worked at the practice of the neurologist that originally suspected I might have muscular dystrophy. So it was very strange for her because, neurologists can be anything from like migraines to ALS.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a lot of people that come into a neurology office that are very messed up. There's a lot of stuff going on, and it's probably not very fun to like have your son have some kind of thing that he has to go in there for.
I'm sure, yeah.
But it's that whole idea. Like I asked her about what is it that's keeping these people alive, and she said it's family members.
Yeah.
Like, and I said like, do you think that these people are cowardly? Do you think they're weak? Do you think they're selfish? And she was like, well, more or less all of the above.
Yeah.
And I dated someone that worked at an emergency veterinary clinic, and she would send me like, it was like a fucking cat with all these tubes down its throat and stuff. It's essentially in a coma. It's gonna die.
Yep.
There's nothing that can be done. But these pet owners are too weak to just let go of the fact that like I think you will probably agree with what I'm going to say here, that there is some types of suffering are good. They are okay, because some types of bad things that happen result in us becoming more resilient. We become more strong.
I don't want to liken you to like a known Me Too person, but like this is actually the Kevin Spacey speech from the beginning of House of Cards. Like literally as he's killing the dog, he points out that like there is like suffering that is pointless, and then there is like this is which I agree 100% with.
And like that to me tells you everything there is to know about the character in House of Cards. And it's true. Like there's certain types of suffering that just happen for no reason. Nothing good will come of it. Like, and for me, that kind of suffering is worthless. It's pointless, and you shouldn't let anything deal with that. Okay, honestly, part of the reason why I put in an application to get a concealed handgun permit is that if I hit an animal on the road and I know it's gonna die, it's my responsibility to end that suffering.
Hello, girl. Your suffering's over. Oh, gee. Oh, my God in heaven! God. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
So I need to do what's necessary, however unpleasant.
That's a good point.
I don't like that idea. I'm not sure if I'll even be able to do that, but it's like, just in case, like I would like to be able to end that suffering, because I did it, and also it's pointless for it to hurt. There's an instance recently at my place of work where there was an injured cat in the parking lot, and one of the coworkers took this cat that without actually clearly looking at the animal, because there's several things that you look at, like can it move its back legs? Move its back legs. If you put its hips upright, does it just fall over? Well, then it's paralyzed. You should kill it, like, or do something, But instead, in this like, oh, let me help kind of thing, takes the cat to the vet's office. It suffers all the way. It suffers into the vehicle, suffers going into the veterinary hospital, suffers in the vet clinic, and suffers until the vet says there's nothing we can do, and then lethally inject the animal. Like, to me, like, that is just this degree of weakness, and not even weakness. It's just a lack of thought. Like, you should look at the animal and understand what's happening, because it's abundantly clear when its spine is broken, to me at least. And this is someone who's like a cat person. Like, you should know these things if you've grown up around cats. But, whatever. I digress.
It is unfortunate that it's like the intent is good. And it's like, but there's a reason, there's a saying that like the path to hell is paved with good intentions. Like intention really, it does count for something. I think our judicial system acknowledges that. There's a reason why there's a distinction between like, manslaughter and murder, for instance. But with that being said, like you can intend something good and your outcomes can be absolutely nothing but horrible. That's
and
Hitler, like, I think, is a great example of that. I'm pretty sure that most people would say Hitler's intentions were pretty good. Like, we're canceled. We are so canceled. I can't say
we're
that.
Done. That's it. Well, he, in his own mind, however warped, he thought that what he was doing was the right thing.
I think that's my point. So a lot of people have this idea that there are people that are like and there are psychopaths that are just evil. However, a lot of the people that people think are evil or they disagree with, it's like you just need to recognize that those are people doing what they think is best. It's not that they're like out there maliciously being like, oh, how can I fuck up the world?
And like, recognizing my own hypocrisy, when I was very young, my cat would bring animals in, and she fully intended to, make a meal out of them. And I would attempt to save a lot of these animals. But the thing I didn't realize is that cats, they're predators and they're about efficiency. Those are all babies.
Yes.
I wasn't saving anything. I was essentially just putting them out there to die, just to live a little bit longer and not be able to fend for themselves and die. And there's one occasion in which there was one that I was attempting to, quote, save from her, and I turned it over and realized it was missing a limb. And I was like, oh my God, this thing has just sat here without one of its forelimbs for the past several minutes of me trying to get my cat to leave it alone. And it is pretty much gonna die, and there's nothing I can do. And I just went inside and I was like, eat it, and then after that I never did it again, because I realized that this is not helping. This is just, it's not doing anything good. I mean, maybe there's a debate of like me trying to rescue a turtle from the road. It is an animal that's now on a man-made structure that would not exist in its habitat, which it may not instinctively have any kind of, it may not be equipped naturally to deal with the situation. So
and if it was already, if it was not already injured, then I would argue that it's completely different.
I mean, that boy was not injured at all. That fucker was trying to kill me. It was, but it. And this was an episode where there was no way we were going to get through this one without talking about issues, because this is stuff that actually happened and things that we really needed to address.
And honestly, I mean, I do want to say that like I now have like this biopic gave me like a solid belief in this. Like I do actually like advocate for this now, and I honestly like I feel like things should change. I mean, there's I want to plug like deathwithdignity.org is an organization that is trying to work for there to be patients' rights across all 50 states, because it is still, even though Kevorkian did his work at like 20 years ago at this point, it is still not legal across all 50 states. And I think that really is at a certain point like not the progress that we want to see in the world. I am surprised that it has not changed yet.
So here is one issue, because you were talking about chiefly what's illustrated in this movie, and the main point that I think you made toward the beginning was the whole kind of religious idea of things. This whole idea that and it's not necessarily just religious. There's some people that would call themselves maybe humanists that have the idea that
Sure.
like all life is precious. But when someone uses the term sanctity,
Okay.
specifically, that is mostly used in a religious context.
Yeah.
Because if you look it up, the chief definition of this is the state or quality of being holy, sacred, or saintly. And then the secondary definition is ultimate importance and inviolability. Words are hard. That this idea that there's a certain, just because a life is a life doesn't inherently give it value, because that value is subjective to that individual.
Okay.
So if that person's life is at the point where because this is something weird, like I've noticed that some old people, like when you like way up there, like 80s, 90s, a lot of them are just kind of tired of being alive.
Yeah.
They're like, I've done this for a while. And it's in those moments where I realize that one of the reasons that I can make sense of to reconcile the how finite life is that sometimes people just get tired of being alive, even when they've lived a relatively healthy life. Completely off this subject, I also think that human memories, I don't think our brains could handle being alive for hundreds upon hundreds of years.
Probably.
But that's another issue for another conversation. But it's like,
Well,
I,
interestingly, the example you brought up with humanists, if they consider all life as precious, are they against euthanasia in veterinary clinics then? Because I do think that there's a weird line that we draw where why is it okay to do it for pets? It to me, it comes down to like almost the religious belief that for some reason humans are not part of the animal kingdom, we're separate from it. And it's like it's okay for animals to be euthanized, but humans are different. And it almost comes down to like, is it the soul belief at that point? Or like, what is it then that draws the line where we are not part of that group that we find it to be acceptable?
Yeah, there's and a lot of it I think is that like master owner idea with dogs and cats. Like I semantically don't like that. So I say I'm a cat's roommate.
Sure. Okay.
I don't own him. Like, I mean
let's be real. With cats, you're part of the staff. He runs shit. Yeah. Like you're the butler. You're Jarvis.
Yeah. It's like great because he seems to think that I can control sunlight too. He's like, you bring back the warming light,
dude.
Open the blinds.
Yeah. Oh my god. The other day, Boots. Holy shit. Like I feel like I was able to actually deduce what my cat was yelling at us about. I think that he thinks we control the rain, and he was yelling at us to make it stop raining. And like I swear that's the only logical like what was going on in his mind. He was like, "Why are you doing this? Like turn the water off." Like, but yeah. Which I mean makes sense. If the cat, if he sees that we can give him food and we give him other things, like does he think that we are just the like somehow we control other shit? Yeah.
And I'm starting to understand like the appropriateness of what people say, because for me, I've had to, because I used to say just kill. Like I've had to kill 2 cats. I paid someone to kill those cats because for me, I thought that there was some kind of like, harshness to the reality that I needed to be in touch with, and that's why I used those words. But people say things like put down or put to sleep.
Yeah.
And I've always thought of those words as being like sort of this like weak kind of watered down way of running away from the reality of what's happening. But after watching this movie, I recognize that those words are important, the words that we use.
Yeah.
Because kill implies, when you say it about a pet, it implies some kind of almost malice, like some kind of like ill will that when people hear kill, they think shotguns or knives or things like that.
Yeah.
That you say something like that and it has a much worse like idea. That the semantics here are important. And if you hear the way that he's euthanasia, assisted suicide, and of course I actually fervently disagree if this was actually said in the courtroom, because lawyers, man, sometimes they do this thing where they understand that people in a courtroom are emotional beings and they try to stir that up.
Yes.
When when the Nazis,
Yes.
in my opinion, incorrectly called what they were doing euthanasia.
Yeah.
That to compare the two, because that's the word that they used incorrectly.
Yeah.
Like I understand like why someone would be upset about that in a courtroom.
Yeah.
And
like I'm not for
calling
someone like speaking like speaking out of turn in court like that and everything. But when Kevorkian, like I don't know if he really did that in real life, but when he like was like, "How dare you?" Like I was like, yeah, that is a completely valid like interjection. Like I'm glad he called him out on that bullshit. Yeah.
And you call it assisted suicide, and maybe that's not the right thing to call it. Maybe euthanasia is the thing to call it. Like but the whole idea, like doctor death, like they just tried to make the guy out to be some kind of some monster a lot in the media, I think. And
however, I think there is one really important thing you brought up too. Like on the other side of the words we use being important, I do think that multiple times in the movie it was like, while talking to the patient and recording the interviews, it was important to get them to say like, so what is it that you're hoping for? Like you need to make sure that like, use the ugly word, like I want to die, like rather than it just being like, oh, I want to pass on, or I want to, it's like it's like, no, we like explicitly make sure that you are accepting the uncomfortable idea of like the reality of the situation.
Another point to make that I'm just going to say it now before I forget it. Thomas, was it Yauk?
Yeah, I believe, yeah.
That the individual with ALS, there's in the actual video footage that he took in the interview. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they showed it in the movie. Dr. Kevorkian asks the man what his religion is. And he says Catholic. He says it twice. So, and I think the reason why he asked this was that if this person's Catholic, then they must not consider what they're doing suicide.
Yeah, because in Catholicism, that is a sin, and that I think is the other big part of the religious argument is like that's what I see is that many branches of Christianity consider suicide to be a sin, and from what I understand, a unforgivable sin. It's almost like you could lead you could be Mother Teresa, and literally, if you kill yourself at that last moment, your soul is irredeemable and you are damned to an eternity of hell.
And if I'm honest, Mother Teresa was actually kind of a shitty person. But
that was the best example I could go with. Let's just say you could be a saint. You could live your life completely pious. But and for some reason, though, that sin is weighted so heavily that it can invalidate any good you've done. Like, yeah.
Well, it's the common thing. Bad person, Hitler. Good person, Mother Teresa. That's what everybody goes for. And there's reason for that.
Dude, Lee and Chad just brought up an interesting... Have you ever heard of Harold Shipman, apparently? He was an actual Dr. Death in the UK that went around actually killing old people, not assisting suicide, but like taking it into his own hands that like, oh, you're time for you to die. So that is definitely
it's good to have British people in the chat.
Yeah. That is an interesting like bastardization of this idea, huh?
Oh wow, this guy's actually totally like not he doesn't. I'm looking at some stuff about him. He didn't really make it.
I've seen a video about
anyone's choice.
Oh my god. Hold on. Have you ever heard of That Chapter? There's a plug this dude's YouTube channel. I fucking love him. He makes videos called That Chapter, or his YouTube channel is called That Chapter. He talks about like the serial killers and stuff a lot. I feel like he did a video on this guy, and I think that's where I learned about him. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Lee.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. Yeah, that and that's a situation where you're not making it about the patient. You're just, it's almost like narcissism, even like bordering on psychopathy that, you believe you were qualified to make this call.
But like in the movie, that's what we saw people against Kevorkian thinking he was doing. And it's like, it was either the media or certain things. I mean, like, look at the religious protesters were outside his home, and there's like the kid in the wheelchair with a sign that says "Please don't kill me." Like, you have to be. That is the like we have talked about on this podcast. The idea of being not even wrong. That is what that is. Like, you are so far like outside of the reality of the situation. Like, yeah, you're not even wrong. You're just like, you don't even get what's going on.
it was once again trying to relate that to the Holocaust, that I am a quote undesirable.
Yeah.
Like that they're relating this whole idea to the fact that, and okay, did you notice that one person he rejected?
Was Adam Driver?
Yes.
Fucking. And that, dude, that scene to me was so important. It was incredibly powerful. I mean, Adam Driver is a fucking treasure. I love that man. Like, he is such a good actor. He nailed it in that scene, but also the importance of just what they were saying, just showing that like there is a difference between clinical depression and someone being terminally ill. If there is like, I mean, that is the whole argument, the whole like turn of phrase that people use, that how suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. What if the problem's permanent? If you are terminal and it is not going to get better, that is very different than someone who just has clinical depression. If you can address these issues, you can lead a fulfilling life. That is very different than someone who their condition is terminal and they have no chance of that changing.
Yeah, you know, I agree. I mean, that is a super important scene, because his methodology, or what I would call methodology, seemed that just because you want to die doesn't mean you should. That there's a criteria, like it needs to be assessed by someone that at least has some idea of what they're looking for, if this is really something that cannot be fixed. And, you know, for me, kind of going back to that mini episode that we did, I'm going to mention one detail. For me, I have this, a lot of us do, most humans, I think, have this hot kind of burning sensation at our core to do something. Like when you see something that bothers you, like the George Floyd incident, people in Europe protested this that aren't even here. That every fucking time I like saw anything about what happened, when I saw the footage during the trial, like I had this burning like inside, like I want to do something, but it's already happened. And I felt that way with some of these patients, because a lot of the people that were in the videos were these were the actual people. And
that was interesting that they did that. I really appreciated that.
And when I see like ALS, like Lou Gehrig's disease, your nerves, they die. Like from the outside in, they just die. And you are left with a body that you can't, you have to struggle to breathe. At a certain point, you can't really move anything but your eyeballs. And there's a certain point you get to where I don't even think you can control your eyelids anymore. And to me, like when I see that, I wish I could do something. And,
that is like, with Stephen Hawking, it's like, I mean, we got to the point where he was only able to control his eyelids, and it's like before he died, we were losing one of the most brilliant minds on the planet that could have like been to where he can think and not communicate. And that is such a scary thought. Imagine being conscious and able to think and exist in your own mind, but not have any sort of communication or anything to the outside world like that. That is hell to me. Like that is like, I can't construct a worse place, I think.
And it's weird because I almost like, when I see that, I rage at the state of existence for anything like that happening. And maybe I can't do anything, but I understand, you know, I have muscular dystrophy. It's not going to exactly kill me, but I understand what it's like to have something happen and have no control. And if you're in a situation where you can get just a little bit, and even if that means having control of ending your own life, that's something. And to me, there is sanctity in that.
I 100% agree. The scene that
to me is sacred.
I agree. The scene that resonated the most with me in that regard, and I think just because of my personal experience, was the first case, Janet Adkins. Like, Alzheimer's to me is fucking terrifying. It is not a physical debilitating disease, but if you lose all of the facets of your mind, I mean, I will stand behind the argument that is the one thing that when people try to set us apart from the animal kingdom, that is what humanity has that is different, is the way our mind works. We are able to consciously look at things like in a way that we don't think that any other animal really can. I mean, we can't get inside their heads to prove that, but humans' mental acuity, like that is what we do. If you lose that, like you are losing yourself, and that is terrifying to see someone like I've had to experience and see someone go through that, and like watching someone forget their loved ones, forget people that, I mean, like my grandfather suffered from Alzheimer's and forgot who his wife of 50 years is. That to me is terrifying. If you've been with someone for literally like to watch someone celebrate their golden anniversary and then forget who their partner is that to me is yeah, incredibly scary. And yeah, I cannot imagine like losing so much of who you are like that.
Yeah. And I mean, it's almost like this constant state of terror.
Yeah.
One thing that because I learned some things about Thomas, was it Yauk? I'm just gonna say Yauk.
It's Youk. Yeah. So yeah.
I learned some things about his case and some stuff some commentary that Dr. Kevorkian made that apparently, and I think it was on the 60 Minutes interview, what he actually said to Barbara Walters was about the fact you can see in the video he has to like lean his head back to like breathe because he has to open up his airway enough to actually be able to breathe. He's like choking like on his own saliva. He's having difficulty swallowing. He was terrified of choking to death.
Yeah.
That's something that, according to Dr. Kevorkian, I didn't see him actually say it, that at the time the man himself said, Dr. Kevorkian said that he was terrified of choking to death. And for me, it's like, do you want to choke to death in terror, or do you want to be in complete control of what's happening and have some kind of call of, how this happens? And, and I don't know if it's like Scandinavians, from what I understand, tend to be pretty comfortable with the idea of death. But I think mainland Europeans, like a lot of Westerners, like many of us are just really uncomfortable. And like, dude, okay. Yeah. Another thing that my mother mentioned to me, she is 60. She turned 70 this year.
Okay.
So yes, my mother
you just
is
went as I was about to say, you went as hard as you could not to say 69, dude. One of my favorite podcasts on the Your Mom's House podcast, they had an ongoing segment where they would ask their viewers that had 68-year-old parents to record them saying, "Hey mom, when dad turns 69 next year, are you gonna 69 on his birthday?" And just see what their responses were. So like there's all these videos of 69-year-old parents, like the dad is always cracking up and the mom's always like, "Oh my god, don't say that." Like, it's great. It is just absolutely great. So if you were a fan of that podcast, I wish you would have done that with your mom. But
that would have been pretty funny, actually. But the point she made was that as you get older, you tend to just become a little more cozy with death, like you're getting closer to it. And for younger people, like I was telling her, like we straight up forget. Like that's the reason why I said memento mori at the beginning of this episode, is that like, okay, you see it in movies, someone just died that was your age, you kill characters in video games, but you just completely fucking forget that it's ever gonna happen to you. Like you legitimately just forget. Like it's right in front of you and you ignore it completely. And that's a common thing. It's funny, we've barely talked about this movie. We talked more about the things surrounding it.
I mean, we talked about that last week, that's the whole point. Well, okay, so yeah. I do want to talk about one awesome detail from the movie. It's I want to lighten it up for a second. So the Mersatron. That's a cool name. That's a cool name for that is a cool name for his machine. Do you know where I'm going with this?
Garbage.
Oh, dude, no, it's the Mercy machine. So, but in reality, the Mersatron was the second machine, the one that had the gas mask attached. Do you know what the actual name for the first machine was? It was the Thanatron. Named after Thanatos, the Greek god personification of death, which of course is the name inspiring Thanos. So I cannot help but love the fact that I wish I had my gauntlet on right now, but I love the fact that he, like, the actual machine was called the Thanatron, and it like literally shares the inspiration for the name from Thanatos.
And that is one thing about Jack Kevorkian that a lot of people don't recognize, is that he was quite eccentric.
Yes.
He was a really weird guy. Like, I mean, that macabre art that he did, I actually think his art is really cool. Like, I've seen quite a lot of it.
I literally looked at buying an original Kevorkian piece. Unfortunately, the cheapest one I can find is like in the $20,000 range. But like I would love to own a print of one of his pieces. I do love that. That was one thing that was really cool in the movie, that like I loved that he was a creator. He painted, he wrote poetry, he played music. Like, that is just, not enough people do things like that. I think that like we've got a lot of people in the world that just kind of don't have this creative outlet, that I really appreciate seeing someone whose passion and what they're really doing for their occupation has nothing to do with that, but they have these creative outlets on the side. And that was one of the biggest questions I had in the movie that I'm glad they answered, was like, you know, early he's talking to that reporter, and the reporter asks him like, how much you charge someone for this, and he's like, you don't charge people for something like this. Like, what, are you fucking crazy? And it's like, that immediately was like, okay, I like where this dude's coming from. And then my question though was like, how the fuck is he staying afloat? Like, if he is shelling out of his pocket to do this, and then it's like, oh well, that is awesome if he is like making art and selling art to fund this thing that he believes in. That to me is just like the type of humanity that we need to see. That is a portion of humanity that most people just aren't even capable of for some reason.
Yeah, well, I think some people are incapable. I mean, and creativity is like different to different people. Like, for some people, creativity might be making an omelet. For someone else, it might be building a deck.
To clarify, I mean, the fact that someone is willing to use their creative outlet to fund helping other people, like literally, like it's almost like selfless to a point where he's like selling art so he can like fund this like help, like this thing that he believes in. Like, it at least the way Pacino portrayed this character, and I'm hoping it's true to real life, it came across as someone that actually believes in what he is saying, not just trying to like, you know, either profit or do something that's kind of, you know, yeah.
And there's also some degree of arrogance to the guy. I mean, at least the way they portrayed him in the film. I wonder if he really was that arrogant. But there is something about, just on the subject of his artwork, that's one of the things that really weirded a lot of people out about him, was his art. That was one of the things that made a lot of people uncomfortable, particularly the religious right, which you don't really hear the term religious right as much in the same context as you did in the 90s.
Yeah.
But there's something about like this idea that your ancestry, the things that happened to the people in the past, somehow impact you in the future. It's some kind of psychic kind of wound or imprint that's happened over generations. You know, my father's Punjabi from India, and there's certain things that Indian people that were born and raised there, especially the older ones, will tell me are like just Punjabi things and like stuff that we do and like ways that we act. And that's only half of me. But being Armenian, there's something about the Armenian genocide and some of the things that occurred to the Armenian people that, in some weird like metaphysical, maybe almost kind of woo-woo sort of way, could have an effect on like a person in some kind of strange regard, you know. And I think there was something about him growing up with two Armenian parents and hearing the things and knowing the things that happened that put him in touch with death in a way that was different. When he talked to his mother on her deathbed, that he became more comfortable with this stuff. And a lot of people they felt very uncomfortable with him. And a lot of his artwork, I think, shows his kind of familiarity with death and his comfort in sort of confronting it in some way, you know.
Which,
and
it is weird that we consider that so morbid and so macabre, where it's like, I mean, it is like death is just a part of life. We try to avoid it and everything, but literally, like, I mean, until science solves it, you know, it's like we are all going to have to face it. You know, it's like, I mean, that's been like the meme for, you know, 100 years or so, that we think that science is going to give us immortal life. we're you're probably not going to reach that point. And you know, what is the Johnny Depp movie where he downloads his consciousness, like the singularity or whatever,
Transcendence.
Or transcendence, yeah. But the idea is the reaching a singularity with technology, where so unless that actually happens, like spoiler alert, we're all going to die one day. It seems so weird that we need to avoid that subject, that it has to be some sort of taboo thing, that like when you start talking about that, all of a sudden you're being dark, or for some reason, like it's weird to me. It's like, it's just like, and it does seem to be like you pointed out, like a Western cultural thing. Like, the Scandinavians, like I do think, again, I think it comes down to, I think, a religious thing. I do think that like other faiths, that if they look at the Egyptian ancient religion, like the Tibetan, having a book of the dead, having like death be this ritual, this whole like looked at as a passage, as just a part of life, is to me so much more beneficial than looking at it as this like taboo weird thing that you're not supposed to talk or think about until you're imminently facing it.
Yeah, it is like, the Scandinavians are also more comfortable with nudity.
Sure, true.
There's all kinds of stuff that they're much more comfortable with.
Yep.
But yeah, it is something that we try really, really hard to run away from. And I've started to wonder, like, why. Like me and my dad straight up had this conversation where we were trying to figure out when he was gonna fucking die. Like, based on his medical condition and like the things that are going on and like things that have happened in the past, he and I sat there and we together worked
crunched
through
the numbers.
Yeah, and we agreed on about the same number. And that is the definition of morbid. I mean, we were talking about him dying, and it's not something that I'm uncomfortable with. And, for me, like, and I'm sure I've mentioned this here before, but if I haven't, I will now. Like, I have some idea of what my deathbed will look like. I had an uncle with the same disorder as me, and he died at 76. He was laying on a bed. The only thing he could move his wrists and his ankles, and he was having some difficulties breathing because the muscles, around the rib cage and certain surrounding area there it was becoming more difficult for him to do so. And I remember him sitting there talking about, at his age, in his mid 70s, talking about
real quick,
how the kids used to make.
When was this? How old were you?
Yeah. I was, let me see. What year is it? How old am I? I was 25, maybe 24, 25.
Okay.
And I just remember him like sitting there, like kind of in the place not too far from his demise. Like, he was talking about like how the kids made fun of him, like when he was younger. It was a strange thing, like kind of looking back. And I've had a few relatives that I've gotten to hang out with before they died, and they were coherent enough to where people that know they're going to die, they tell you the most interesting stories. And it's like, but the point that I'm trying to get to is that like I have some idea of what it will probably look like when I die, assuming I live long enough to get to that point. So for me, it's something that I'm very comfortable with. And it's funny, like, I don't know if you remember when we were younger, you might not know about this at all, but do I?
I just said not much. I'm just jokingly. I don't remember much from being younger, but yeah.
There's repress it all. There's same here. I mean, I'm sure I can't remember a lot of it with accuracy anyway, but I didn't like wearing clothing with skulls on it. And since like us and like all the people we hung out with listened to like aggressive music, like metal and hardcore and stuff, like it was hard to find band shirts that didn't have skulls on them.
Okay.
I was just really uncomfortable with them. And
because of that idea of morbidity or like mortality, I guess, right?
Yes.
Like,
Yes. Yep. And I think these two have something to do with each other, because I also used to be fucking terrified of flying.
Okay.
And I don't know if you remember, I don't know if you were with me. Oh yeah. It was when, oh shit, what was that place called? I think it was when Green Street first opened up,
Okay.
and the Agony scene were playing there.
Okay. I think I remember that night. Yeah.
And we were there. I think Throwdown was there, which was weird.
I can believe that.
And there was an Agony scene T-shirt that had a fucking skull on it, and I was like, you know what? Fuck it. So I just bought one. I bought this big fucking skull, and I was like, you know what? Cool. And then I was on a plane a few months later. I was like going to see my dad. Like I started flying on my own at like 16, 17 years old. Actually, no, 15 was the first time I flew alone.
Okay.
And
I think same here.
I remember
actually,
being on the yeah, it's kind of cool, like when you're that age, to just go out on your own. Kind of, it's a nice feeling.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I used to always freak out at the slightest bit of turbulence. Then I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Like, there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
Like, if this plane like just falls out of the fucking sky and just gets blown to shit, like, I am 100% not in control of this.
Well,
and if I'm done, I'm done.
If you jump out of the door at the exact right time, you can just hit the ground running. You just have to have the right amount of momentum. It's just all, especially if the plane is going down at the right angle of a mountain, you could just walk out and just, as long as you're running fast enough, you'll be fine. So,
yeah, like you jump into the air and then you allow your legs to move fast enough to form a hoop.
Yeah.
And then when they do that, you hit the ground and you say meep meep, and then you just
got it.
You just go.
Physics lessons.
This is science.
Yeah.
You heard it here.
But no, the greater point is that it is just, I mean, I hate the term, but it's just the whole, like, the let go, let God. It's not God, but it is just like, there is nothing you can do. There is literally like, just admit that you have no control in that situation. And I do think that is what scares people the most about flying, is that, like, you could show people the data that they are way more likely to get into a car accident. But when you're in a car and you're the one driving, there's something you can do. You could feel like, oh, I would be able to steer away from that accident. I can drive,
like,
you know.
At least it's my stupidity that gets me killed. Like, you know, the car came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But after that, like, I have like salt and pepper shakers that are skulls. Like, I actually became like, skulls were my thing for a while, because I was like, hell yeah, I'm gonna die.
I like them for that. I think we talked about that in a recent episode, where it was like, that is the reason why some of the great thinkers of the past would have a human skull on their desk, is it is that intimate connection with just be aware of your mortality. It doesn't have to be a dark thing. In fact, I honestly think that can be one of the most inspiring things, is if you are aware that your time here is limited and one day you are not going to be here any longer, that is a reason to get shit done while you're here.
Yeah. There is a cemetery that's very close to the Greenway here, and I have ridden that bike back there through the fucking cemetery. I'm not sure if it's strictly allowed, but no one's ever told me not to. But it's like right next to the Greenway, and every now and then the gate is open, and I'll be like, okay. So I'll like ride through there. It's kind of weird.
I've definitely, I mean, there was a time in the past where you were with me for a few of them, where there was a period in my past where I was really into like exploring abandoned buildings and places like that. And I would also enjoy going to cemeteries at night when they are supposed to be closed and things like that. There is just an interesting feeling. Like, it's supposed to be eerie to some people, but yeah, there's just a kind of like, to me, it is just empowering to accept that again, like, death is just a part of life. It does not have to be scary. Sure, it's fucking unsettling. I can't pretend like it's not some sort of like, I mean, it's completely fucking unknown, and it is like, I mean, and again, talking about the motivation, there is the like, the one scary thing that I can understand is the fact of leaving things undone. The fact that you know that there is going to be a point where like you just can't do anything else. Like, there's going to be X number of projects that are sitting there undone, and like X number of things and loose ends that you just cannot tie up. That part I understand, but that, you just come to acceptance with that, and that's kind of it. Like, other than that, it's like, there's going to be a scary moment, but whatever.
Yeah. To your point, I think that when I think about dying, it's not me not being here. It's the fact that other people I care about, like, they will be sad, and I can't do anything. Like, I won't be here.
Yep.
And it's not like I can tell them like it's cool. Like, I'm gone. Like, you know, what do I do? Like something terrible fucking happens. And, you know, it's like for you and me, like Mike Shinoda from Linkin Park, Chester Bennington kills himself. Mike Shinoda has this line where someone asks him like, you know, are you okay or whatever? And he's like, says something along the lines of like, oh, I don't know, genius. You know, there's something about like, you know, my friend is gone and my life's work is hanging in the balance.
Yeah.
Like for you and me, like it's this creative thing we do. It's something that's part of like who we are. If one of us is not here, then like I think, well, what's gonna happen to this? It's that loose end thing. Like there's this thing, and like I was part of this, and this is the thing we've done together. And then where is this thing? Like what does Ty do? How does he make this happen? Like how does that feel? Not only is your friend gone, but the thing that we've worked together to do, like what is that now?
And that's totally different. With us, it's just a hobby. Imagine that being your career. That's a whole nother level of uncertainty. We're like, yeah, fuck, what is this? Like,
and you know, I actually got angry because when this is maybe beside the point of the episode, but when Mike Shinoda came out with that one album, what was just him like kind of letting things out, I got angry with somebody because they like, it was like a music snob type person, and no, it wasn't Craig. That was like talking about like, oh, Mike Shinoda, oh, it's such crap. And I'm like, you know what? Like, you can not like his art, but this is someone dealing with the fact that probably one of their closest friends is dead. So like, if you want to talk shit about this, like you can, but it just makes you kind of an asshole. Like that's really how I felt. Like you're gonna stick your nose in the air about music right now. And honestly, it wasn't a bad album in my opinion. As far as rap goes, it was pretty good. I mean, I'm not saying that like it was good for rap. I mean, I like rap, but
I do think real quick touching back, there was a great point you brought up there where the one of the scary things with death is just it's echoing like you were talking about earlier of that feeling where you realize something is going on and you can't do anything. That is the ultimate can't do anything, where you know that you are just not going to be here anymore for an infinity, that there are, I mean, like, unless you know, truly embrace solipsism, you have to accept that everyone else has this vivid life going on that is like exists without you. And then you have to think that it's like, well, shit, if I was instrumental or in any way related to this person's life and I am not here and they relied on me for something, or I did something, or I gave them something, it's like, shit, I'm not here any longer. I can't do that any longer. Like, yeah, that is the ultimate helplessness.
Should we make each other beneficiaries on each other's life insurance policy?
I think that would just give you a motive to kill me. I'm scared to make someone my beneficiary. I feel like that just means they're gonna kill me. I've seen enough movies, man.
Someone that I lived with her, and I guess we were like common law married. Like I actually like, you know, common law. They even talk about common law in this movie. I put her as a beneficiary for my life insurance policy, and as I was doing that, I was like, I'm pretty sure she's gonna kill me.
Yeah, right? Like,
so I shredded the document and didn't take the free life insurance my company was offering, and I was like, I should have broken up with her right then, but I don't know why I didn't.
I felt like it's literally like I am putting a $50,000 bounty on my head right now. Like that is like actually what it is. Like I am my life now has value to someone. Like that's not good.
Depending on what the cost benefit ratio looks like, it could be grim. But there's this kind of weird thing that I do sometimes, and let me know if this happens to you, but there's just times where I will wake up in the middle of the night and I look outside or look at my ceiling, and there's this really weird thing that like hits me, or I'll wake up from a nap. It's always when I wake up. There's this moment where I take my first breath as I'm awake, and for some reason I just get this crazy thing this thought that's like, oh man, I'm gonna die. And there's like this moment of terror and like not wanting that to happen, but recognizing I can't do anything about it.
It does not often happen to me when waking up, but it will just randomly occur to me at certain times where it is like, it just smacks me literally like a truck, where it's like, fuck, you are not gonna exist one day. And yeah, but it is interesting. Like, I don't know why for you it tends to happen when waking up. But yeah, that's interesting though.
But I also have this weird like nihilistic moment that hits me that as I'm thinking, I'm freaked out about this right now only because I'm alive, but then I won't be alive, so then it won't matter necessarily. So is it even valid that I'm thinking this right now?
Yep. I have gone
Like,
through
is
the
this a
exact
waste
same
of
thought
time?
process. Yeah, because it's I mean, literally one of the things that bugs me the most is the loose ends, the not tying things up, things like that. It's like it's stupid, but like I'm a collector of things. I like completing collections. It's like part of me, it's like it thinks that it sucks. It's like, fuck, what if I die before I get this last piece to finish this one collection? Like things like that bug me until I think of the logic of like, after I'm gone, it doesn't fucking matter. Like does not matter whatsoever. And then the logic can try to rein that in and bring me to like understanding that it's like, yeah, I just need to accept that there is peace in non-existence. Like there is like, it's kind of morbid, but there is an inner peace there that it's like, yeah, things literally at that point do not matter.
Yeah, and then at that point it doesn't matter, and for me that makes now matter more.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I think that is the most important thing, is it does not have to be some sort of scary, dark, negative thing. Like it's simply how you look at it. Like the fact that one day you're not going to be here is just the motivation to make every day that you are here matter so much more.
Yeah. Yeah. Remember that you have to die.
Exactly.
There's something about the translations that you read of Memento Mori have to is in parentheses sometimes. And I wonder if that's just an understood thing, like for the words that are used. I did want to kind of brush on something a little bit. Sure. I'm going to open up a whole lot here.
Okay.
I think every normal person has cried during a movie. Even if, for me, I tend to cry at things involving like honor, commitment, brotherhood, sisterhood, things like that. Like the idea of like loyalty or like courage or things like that. That's often what gets me misty. I do not remember. I need to watch The Time Traveler's Wife again, because I cried a lot during that movie, and I'm not sure what it was that made me cry anymore.
I remember that movie being
It was a good film. Yeah. Notebook did nothing for me, but Time Traveler's Wife, it really got me.
That's gonna be one of our filler episodes for next year. Then I want to revisit that one too. So one of the episodes we're not doing a new one, we'll do Time Traveler's Wife.
Okay. Yeah. I would be interested to do that one. Yeah. But and everybody has tears kind of well up. People might need to like dab a little bit with the tissue or whatever. But there is a scene in this movie where I had to pause the film. Like I bawled crying. I've never done that watching a movie.
Can I try to guess?
I bet you can guess it.
Was it Hugh Gale?
Is he the one that was he the other guy with ALS?
No, he was the guy that had emphysema. The older guy that was he was obviously a sailor for years, and maybe not. Maybe that was a scene that got me
a little teary eyed. I did get a little teary during that scene, mainly because of the sort of like kind of connection thing between the two, like the couple, like they're looking and how upset the woman is.
The line "Thank you for a great life, Cheryl" got me. Like that was like the fact that like just thinking of like someone encapsulating a life and just like I'm gonna end it here, but like thank you for what you gave me. Like that was very touching to me. But yeah, no. Which scene were you talking about?
I believe it's when. Oh my God! I really hope I'm. Oh shit! I really hope I'm not getting the movie mixed up with other stuff that I watched. Jesus, it's the younger guy with ALS. I believe in the courtroom scene, they show video footage of him like crying.
Yes.
And I think that's his mother in that scene. Like the way that you can hear. The ALS has changed like the muscles in his body to the point where when he cries, it sounds different. Like he can't even like cry in a way that's like typical of a person whose body works as intended. And the fact that the kid got so emotional, like ALS dude, that shit breaks my fucking heart every single time I see that shit. Like, I think, and it's not, there's these moments where we look at people that are worse off than us and it makes us feel better. But for me, it's not that. Like, I see it and I'm like, oh, why? It's philosophical absurdism, the idea of looking for meaning in a meaningless world. That's what I get when I see that. And it just, that point in the film, like, it just hit me, dude, like so hard. I've never ever had a movie affect me like that. And it's the fact that I know that's a real person, that's really that person that's doing that, it's like, what else is there? Like, you're fucking trapped. Like, what else can you do but cry and then tell someone to kill you?
And
like, what the fuck?
like with Thomas Yao, literally, like, you cannot even take that into your own hands. You are literally at the point where, like, you are at everyone's mercy around you. There is no control you have. That's terrifying. I think that, like, many humans, we have this need for control that may be somewhat unhealthy, but I think there is just a, like, part of being human is having some sort of control over your environment, some sort of, like, anonymity, some power to do something. And when that is when all power to do literally anything is taken away from you, it's like, can you consider that to be a human life anymore? Like, at that point, like, is that a life worth living? How can anyone actually defend that? Not like it, and now again, I'm not making the judgment that if someone in that position thinks their life is worth living, but if, like, what I'm saying is, if that person says that their life is not worth living, how can you make the determination that says, no, it is? Like, no, you need to stay here. Like, no, like,
like, that is in some way, if your perspective is based on, like, Western Christianity, that really is pushing your beliefs on somebody else. It's that you have to do this because the thing that I believe says that you need to stay alive, or there's a family member that's unable to let go. That it's. But I mean, if you got something going on, you think your life is worth living. But if you don't, well, that's your right. It really is. And there's this like black and white idea that, like, that God deserves, humans don't. God made, humans didn't. God says humans don't. Like, it's not that there's this, like, thing that happens, like, with, like, the religious kind of perspective that it's funny, like, being somebody that dabbled in Christianity for a while, but grew up mostly just sort of kind of atheist, I guess, like, having a dad that doesn't have a religion but who is quite skeptical of most things and asks questions, and told me to think about everything, and that my interpretations of certain things are just so different. Like Job, the whole idea about Job is that a bunch of terrible shit, he does everything the right way, the perfect way, and the Yahweh, that God's standards, and he gets all of his shit taken away from him just because an accusing angel whose job is to put people through bad shit has a conversation with God, and that the conclusion is, hey man, I bet you that guy Job that you love so much, I bet you I can make him curse you to your face. And God's like, all right, do it. And then all this terrible shit happens, and he gets all of his shit gets taken away. Then all of a sudden he gets all of his shit back. And at the end of the story, he asks God why. And God basically says, hey, you see that? You see that? You see that shit? How about this animal? Do you even know what that's called? I made that shit. You know nothing. Mic drop. Done. Job gets no answer. And to me, my interpretation of that story is bad shit fucking happens for no reason. And you will never know why. And, that to me, there is no reconciling bad things happening with that God, because that whole thing is a waste of time, because I don't think it's part of the whole story that your bad shit's meant to happen to you in this narrative just because the Lord, what have you, needs to figure out if you really like love him enough or whatever. It's somewhat petty, really, but but for us, there's comfort in the fact that we don't have to try to reconcile why bad shit happens. Because, you know, I'm agnostic, but I do lean toward no. I think because of the way that the religion and the clever way that it's illustrated, it takes itself outside of rational judgment, like the way that it's portrayed. So you must be agnostic. Like you have no other choice, but you can lean one way or the other. For me, I lean toward no.
I'm a big fan of the quadrant thinking where it comes to that, where like I fall into what I would consider agnostic atheist. I would say like my belief is that there most likely is not a God, but my knowledge is that I don't know. Like, you know, where there are agnostic theists that they would say like, well, my belief is that there is a God, but I can't claim that I know. So that's where like the Gnosticism to me is like the knowledge versus the theism is almost the belief. But
yeah, and you know, like earlier when I said this thing about seeing certain things happen, it almost makes me angry at creation. It is convenient to have a God to be angry at.
Yes, very.
But you know, like that would be nice sometimes. But
it is very convenient to have that. I mean, kind of the encapsulating answer of Job, the God works in mysterious ways idea. You know, that it's like there is a plan going on. I am just too finite of a being to understand it. So like, I mean, it's kind of the same as the let go, let God, where it's like it just, you know, admit that there is a greater plan that I don't need to understand. And there is some comfort in that, thinking that someone else has someone else, quote unquote, some entity has an idea, even though you may not understand it.
Yeah, Stoics kind of had this weird, I think we talked about this a while ago, texting. Like Stoics had this kind of weird, like purpose, fate idea. They had this kind of deterministic idea of things, that things happen as their purpose intends. And there's some comfort in that kind of idea too. And it's not necessarily deistic, even though like there seemed to be some sort of brushing at like some kind of deism with a lot of the old school Stoics. Many of them would mention the gods plural, but in sort of a weird way that was more secular.
But, well, it's, I mean, kind of like even like Einstein mentions God, but if you look at like what he meant by it, he literally is talking about just the forces of the universe. So it's like that term is like, you know, it's kind of used by many people to mean many different things. But.
Yeah, there's actually an interesting guy that I work with that I think you should meet. If he would be interested. We only talk in the workplace, but he has some interesting ideas that he reconciles, like as him being a scientist, a deeply analytical person, not just a scientist. And also, I believe he's Catholic.
I would
Methodist. I always get him mixed up. I'd never be able to talk him into coming on the podcast because he's just too old fashioned.
Okay. But I mean, would he just be interested in like going out and grabbing a beer somewhere, or just like going and grabbing dinner? Or
I'll see if he's interested. He lives in Charlotte, so I mean, I would have to figure it out. But yeah, he has a lot of interesting like ideas how he reconciles those beliefs with reality. Some of them are a little bit weak, but they are, I mean, by their nature, it's kind of hard to create super strong arguments.
It can be,
but it's just that, you know, it's easy for us because we feel that there isn't really any reason, that there isn't any kind of answer, or at least I feel that way. I recognize I'm kind of speaking for you. Sorry, but it's
I agree.
That there isn't necessarily like that there isn't a reason per se. It's just like not even one. It's not that there's a reason I can't understand. It's just there isn't one. You know, shit just happens. Things just go.
I had a friend that I considered my best friend for a long time, and like she had a tattoo that was like everything happens for a reason, and it was like I cannot see having that belief in this world. You know, it's like at what point, like if you are a religious person that does believe that everything happens for a reason, like, I mean, that just comes down to the old, like philosophical, it's like, so God just like, God just like births people to die of starvation. Like there are just babies that are born that never have food and die. Like that happens for a reason. Like at a certain point, it's like, like what does that really mean to you?
I think I'm going to get a tattoo that says, doesn't nothing happen for no reason? Nothing doesn't never happen for no reason ever.
Never. How many negatives can you fit into one sentence?
Yeah, I'm just gonna stack as many negatives into it as humanly possible. That's what I would like to do. Um, I it's just funny. Like I had a feeling we probably wouldn't talk a whole lot about the movie, maybe because biopics there's not like really a lot to go with,
Yeah.
other than how they decided to portray somebody. Um, I think that there was something. The fact that Janet she ended up dying of pancreatic cancer,
Mm-hmm.
which my family, actually my cousin's husband, died just a week and a half, 2 weeks ago of pancreatic cancer.
That's rough.
My mother being an RN, when he was stage 4, when they said a month, my mother knew that was optimistic. So that kind of struck a chord with me. Like I only got to hang out with a guy a few times, but a couple times I hung out with him were really cool. But it was strange to me. Margot has a heart attack, and then Janet ends up with pancreatic cancer. He ends up having to like do his procedure thing with Janet, which is
Do we know if that really happened or not? I'm trying to look that up right now. I don't know if that was dramatized for the film or if that was actually true. I'm not sure if the actually I'm not even did the Janet Good character actually exist? I guess Janet Good, Hemlock Society. Yes. Okay. She did actually exist. Finding an article here from 97. Janet Good dies, Kevorkian supporter. Da 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 da. It's good.
You know what? I'm not finding anything that actually happened.
Yeah, I'm not sure it did. Huh.
Because
Yeah.
that scene implied things,
Yeah.
but none of it was ever like. Yeah, that might have just been a dramatization to make the character more interesting.
Which, I mean, it worked. It definitely, it brings a good point to the story. I'm glad that I mean, like they even talked about earlier with Margot, if he would be willing to do that if she was needing it. And like I love that there was that conversation between them when he was trying to decide who the first patient needed to be, and he like had the conversation with it was Janet Adkins was the lady with Alzheimer's, and is like I love that conversation where Margot is bringing up the point that like you kind of have to care about the media at a certain point. It's like, what are the optics of this situation? It's unfortunate, but that is like a reality of our world, is like you need to care about the optics of how things look. If you have a belief in a greater good and a greater point, you can fucking kill your point by not making it in the right way that the media agrees with or whatever. But at a certain point, he's just like, I don't fucking care. He's like, why do we care what the media thinks? He's like, there is a patient right here that needs our help. They deserve the treatment that I'm saying people have the right to get. It's like, why does it need to be the perfect first patient? Like it. And that's why I loved Pacino's portrayal of Kevorkian. And I hope it was true to the real world that he was just someone who really believed in, and I love that it even goes on to show, or at least again, Pacino's portrayal, to say that it's like almost a selfish belief. I want one day I may need this, and I'm advocating for my own right to choose my life, my the end of my life, not necessarily like it is a selfish thing at a certain point. Because I mean, I'm in the same boat. If I had some sort of terminal illness, if I was suffering with Alzheimer's, knowing that is not going to change, if I had like anything like that, it's like, yeah, I would want to have that freedom of choice. And that's kind of why this has like made me believe in like in this cause. Is like, yeah, I honestly truly believe that people should have that choice.
Yeah, I mean, same, and it's also somewhat selfish for me. Like I also would like to have that choice. Yeah, but at least he could be forthcoming about it. That he. But and it all also seems like he seems like the type of guy that wouldn't want to create any perception of nobility.
Yeah.
Like he wouldn't want anybody to think that he was doing something that he thought was like noble or whatever. So I think he seems like the kind of person that would make a point to call it selfishness, and say that it was something he was doing for himself, even if he saw, well, and even I'm sure that was a part of it, right? Even if he saw like a greater good, so to speak, that he seems like the type of person that would downplay any kind of, you know, good deed he was doing. But yeah, it, yeah. I mean, I've always kind of thought about someone's quote, you know, right to die or whatever, but this has really kind of pushed it a little further into the foreground of my, you know, thoughts.
And I was surprised to find after doing my research, or excuse me, after watching the movie and then doing my research for this, that we are kind of still having this debate. That like it is only I think when I looked it up on again I want to plug deathwithdignity.org, but I believe that they show which of the 50 states that assisted suicide is even legal in, and it's like I think it's less than 10. And like that to me is like, yeah, at a certain point, it's like it is almost insane to me that this debate is not yet settled.
Well, I mean, I for the hell of it went back and watched the first debate between Kennedy and Nixon, and they were talking about how we should pay teachers more, and whether or not we needed to hurry up and pay down the deficit. So it's
yeah, I guess I mean
it's
history repeats itself,
kind of,
right?
It's kind of predictable that would happen. That we would still be talking about it because there is still that kind of religious perspective. Because like I hate there's a presupposition when someone says that somebody is playing God. The premise that you're sneaking in there is that there is a God to play.
Yeah, right.
And I'm either it's like that person refuses to drop the premise and I refuse to accept it, and we'll basically just dig our heel. Did you ever read the North Going Zacks and the South Going Zacks, the Dr. Seuss story?
I don't think so. No. Is that one of the ones that was banned recently? Is that one of the 6 that was?
Oh, I didn't know any of them were banned.
You did not hear about that? There were like that was like a big talking point even in Congress within the past few weeks. That like the estate that owns Dr. Seuss's works have decided to stop printing 6 books, and then that apparently the talking point was like they were canceled, quote unquote, just because like either way. I don't want to get us sidetracked. It was just a funny meme about the fact that Dr. Seuss was literally being talked about in Congress within the past few weeks, but.
That's kind of weird. That's something I would not have thought would have happened when I was a child. All the times I forced my dad to read Green Eggs and Ham, and he agreed. Well, there's in the story, there's these 2 little creatures called Zacks, and they keep walking, and they end up crossing like dead into each other. They run into each other, and there's this whole story, like the thing, you know, one of the well, you see, I'm a north-going Zacks, and I always go north, making north-going tracks. That the 2 Zacks refuse to move.
Okay.
And neither Zacks will step aside. They're just sitting there arguing, and the whole thing that happens is the Zacks never move, and a highway is built, and they have to build the highway around the Zacks because they won't move because they're still just sitting there. And to me, like it would be like a north-going Zacks and south-going Zacks conversation. Like, you know, I can't get you to drop this premise, and you will not force me to accept it.
Yeah.
So we're just stuck here. And there's no place else we can go.
Well, I like where Kevorkian went with it. So what? Like he was an atheist in the movie that said like I love that someone it was Barbara Walters accused him of playing God. So fucking what? And I loved his example. Every physician does this when they give you a pill. They are interfering with the natural processes going on in your body. That is I loved how he worded it. Like every doctor thinks they're playing God. They may not admit it, but that is literally like the profession is just taking over nature and changing its course. I think like even if you don't accept the existence of God, if you like, it's still fine to say, yeah, so what? Sure, I'm playing God. That's fine.
Yeah, and there are a lot, and that's the reason why there are certain like groups of people like that typically Christians in the US that will not seek any kind of medical attention because of that exact argument that he's making.
Yep.
it's because, it's like, because someone can always just say okay to that argument and be like, yeah, you're right. It's like, like, I don't like bad things happening to animals. Like, okay, fine. Well, then don't eat meat. Then they'll be like, okay, fine. And they just, like, I use it as rhetoric, but then they're like, you know what? You're right. I just won't.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I appreciate when people are logically consistent like that. I don't understand when the inconsistencies are pointed out to someone and they cannot seem to see it or accept that, like, oh well shit, hold on, I may need to adjust what I'm saying or believing because of that.
Yeah.
Like, somehow we like
either,
humanity just doubles down on like, nope, I'm inconsistent, but it's okay. Like,
and in that situation, it's like either recognize that you need to stop seeking medicine altogether and then just stop, or realize that if you intend to continue seeking medical attention, you accept the fact that that is, quote, playing God,
yep.
and that you accept that the other thing is, quote, playing God, and they're no different, and that both should happen.
Exactly.
But, it's like one of those things where stick to your guns, I guess. If this is what you believe, then stay consistent.
Yes. Yep.
But yeah, I don't know where things are going to go, where the discussion is going to end up. By the way, that is my favorite line in The Crucible. The John Proctor line about his name.
Oh, I thought you were just saying a fart on Thomas Putnam, but and that's a good one too.
Oh no! Oh, what?
The
What?
line that Feiger is quoting before Kevorkian goes into the name speech. There's just a funny line in The Crucible that is a fart on Thomas Putnam. But yeah.
But yeah, I really like that. That's the line that I really like about it. I think I've mentioned it in another episode actually, because I like that that line that they decided to, like, have him say. And I bet you Jack Kevorkian actually said that. He probably quoted that in an interview or something, and that's why they put it in there.
I think it's fun. I actually had that picked as my favorite line. I was going to cheat, even though it's a line from The Crucible. It's a line from this, but yeah, no, I've got other ones that are backups. But yeah, no, I do that really resonates with me, because there is a lot of meaning behind that. They like your name does mean something. Like you have a name, you have a reputation. Like people can take a lot of shit from you, but like as long as you stay consistent and stay with what you are, like that's what you can protect. Like that is the thing you really have control over, is like your name, your reputation, like who you are and what you are.
Yeah. There was and that to me was kind of like the sort of symbolism, or sort of the parallel that they were, not symbolism, the parallel they were trying to draw was between, that dude kind of sticking to whatever principles he had and also liking that line. There's one scene in the film that I wanted to mention that I can kind of relate to in a way. Margot has a heart attack, right? Mm-hmm. And Jack goes to the morgue, and it's not, was it coroner, I guess is what they're called there.
Sure.
The coroner's like, do you want to see her? And he's like, no. Just kind of walks off.
Yep.
Some people might think of that as being sort of cold, but it is almost like a graveyard humor thing, but also just a realistic idea of what's happening. That I had I had a cat that belonged to one of my sisters, then belonged to the other one, and then that cat had cancer. It's funny, my sister was overseas without any access to like a telephone. Ooh. And that cat was at a kennel that was also a veterinary hospital. She basically got hustled. They were like, we couldn't get a hold of you, so we did all this cancer treatment and removed these tumors, and
and now you owe us 10 grand or whatever. Yeah,
here's what she needs to take for the next several months. It's like, well, shit, fine. So she'd already had cancer at one point, so she ended up with it again. The tumors were getting really bad. There was blood in her urine. She already had hyperthyroidism. She's in bad shape. And this was the second time I'd had to have a cat put down, and once again, it's a cat. I get it. It's not my sister. This is Margot, but I can relate because
it's still a living being that you care about. I mean, like
yeah. And you're standing there and you see this mammal that you know, that there is you spent some time with, and you maybe feel has emotionally been there for you, whether or not the animal intended to. And you're familiar with this animal, and there is this moment after they administer the poisons, really. There's a moment where I know I don't know her anymore. There's a moment where I can just tell that this is not the animal that I knew. And at the moment she became unfamiliar, I actually said, and I'm sure that they probably thought it was a little fucking weird, I said, I have no need to be here now. I have no need to hang out with a corpse.
Yeah.
And I just kind of walked off, and I was like, this is it. Like, that's the end. There's nothing. And there's these moments that I think to myself, like, how long is the brain alive? How long is the optic nerve actually firing? Would there have actually been some benefit to me being there for a little bit longer? But then I also think to myself, like, your instinct of the unfamiliarity was probably correct. That at the moment that you felt like you didn't know that animal anymore, that was that. And I just thought, there's no sense sitting here staring at this body. Like, what's it going to do for me? Probably make things worse.
Yeah.
So I just left.
Yep.
But it's crazy. Like, at a lot of veterinary clinics when that happens, most of the staff members become very deeply emotional because they got to deal with this shit all the time.
Yeah.
And they probably had similar experiences.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, maybe that's a weird thing to say, but I can relate to him not wanting to see the body.
I can understand that. No, I think it does. Like, again, as Pacino portrayed Kevorkian in this, very like logical in a lot of places, very rational, and like you're saying, yeah, what is the logical, rational, benefit of that? If it's not going to do anything beneficial for anyone, what is the point? That's harkens back to the pointless suffering we talked about earlier. It can be masochistic, sure, like sit and make yourself sad and face, like, but for what benefit? I do think there's one scene in the movie I really wanted to point out, that I am not someone that is like superstitious at all, but if I was a construction worker, I would not get Jack Kevorkian to sign my hard hat. That to me was hilarious. Like that is just super. Like, I don't believe in bad omens, but like, dude, like having Kevorkian sign your hard hat, that just seems like a really weird thing. Like,
yeah, I would maybe like get Jack Kevorkian to sign the inside of a T-shirt and then gift it to someone I didn't like. Yeah, that was a weird scene. Like, it makes me wonder if that actually happened. But you know, it's good that they portrayed some supporters, because I think there were some people that probably supported the ideas.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I mean, like they said when he was on the morning talk radio, it was like, you know, like the host was surprised by like 40 to 50% of callers are agreeing with you, and it's like I do think that there is kind of a knee-jerk reaction a lot of people would have. It's like, oh, of course no one would agree with this, and it's like, well, shit, hold on, let me really think about the situation. Like, yeah, we are advocating for human rights. Like, that, what it really boils down to is like, sure, you can claim he's murdering people, you can like, but no, really what it comes down to is like, it is about someone's right to choose.
Yeah, and when people it's funny, like I feel like a lot of the time when I talk to Christians in the US, that they regurgitate, like, shit just comes out of their mouth. It's like, if this, then say this.
Yeah.
And the word free will spouts out of people's mouths a lot. And when I try to ask them what they mean exactly and try to have a discussion about it, that just never happens. But if you want to use the free will thing, that God gave you free will, then, well, here you go.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There's some free will right there. And then, of course, that's the moment where, you know, people realize that a lot of the things that many of us say, like, that if you think about it clearly, it collapses on itself pretty fast. So
we all have hypocritical beliefs.
Yep. And I've had that happen too. Someone makes me think about something and I'm like, I did not realize until just now how unbelievably ridiculous this belief is.
Yep.
Thank you for that. Also, how humiliating, but also thanks.
Yeah, that is a humiliating but powerful moment. It is definitely like it feels wrong and bad in the moment, but it is a good feeling later. Yeah. There was one other really weird moment I wanted to touch on in the movie. I don't know if this happened or what. I mean, I guess it had to have happened because he did end up being tried for this. But the coroner or medical examiner that was sitting there saying to Thomas, "Oh, science itself gives us no arguments," and then writes homicide on the files, like, hold on. So are you trying to say that you're being completely objective with the facts while writing homicide? That does not at all make sense. Like, that has to be your personal beliefs influencing that decision, because there literally is nothing from the body that you would gain that says that, right? Like, to me, like, that was just like an like, I hope the creators of the film did that as a way just to show the hypocrisy. Like, I'm hoping that that's what that was, because to me it was a great example of that. But
Yeah, I mean, I wondered if that person was under duress, but like I'm not really sure. Like that I was very confused by that scene. But they were actually tried.
well, yeah, Kevorkian was he was on trial 4 times apparently, and then did end up, like, yeah, just like in the movie, he did serve multiple years after defending himself in the last trial with Thomas Yao.
Yeah, I mean, I was aware that happened. I think he got released like the year before he died.
Yeah, he was
He
released
died in like 2011, I think.
Well, he was released in 2007, and then he even ran for Congress in 2008. He ran as an independent. I mean, he only got like 2.6% of the vote. I mean, he got, he was running
wow.
he did have a little bit of a career after prison. Yeah. And actually, apparently, that's kind of interesting. I'm reading now that that quote, when he said, you were saying doctors play God all the time. Of course, anytime you interfere with the natural process, you're playing God. That was apparently after his release in 2010. He was interviewed by Anderson Cooper.
Oh, Anderson Cooper interviewed him?
Apparently,
interesting.
Yeah. I'd be interested in seeing that interview after his release. Yeah.
Yeah, I might actually go out and find that one now. Yeah, you got anything else, man?
Let me see here. Not. Oh, okay, I do have one more question I want to bring up. So he was obviously being a little over the top with the comparison and everything, but it is kind of just objectively true that, like, the accepted method that we do use, like literally pulling the plug on someone, we're just starving them to death. We are cutting their foods. That, like, that, like, how we deem that as the accepted method versus any sort of like painless lethal injection, something like that, to me is just kind of insane. That it's like I mean, he goes over the top and says that, like, oh, well, the American judicial system has embraced the Nazi Germany method of, like, which is like, that is a extremist way of saying that, but like, I just kind of factually true. Like, literally, like, we are just saying that, like, oh, the humane way is just to cut their food and water supply and let them starve to death.
Yeah, yeah, obviously, like, I mean, I agree with you that, yeah, he did really go way over the top with the comparison. Like, he exaggerated quite a lot when he said it, but it is the way in which you feel like you were the least active in contributing to the death of the individual.
Yep.
But in a way, it's also the most, I mean, I don't know a better word to use, but no, I'm not going to use that word. I'll say it's also the way that requires the least grit.
However,
that you,
like you're saying that is okay. So we've talked about before that, like, selfish is not necessarily bad. However, in that situation, I think like the main argument is, oh, that's the way that requires the least from the, like, okay, so the person that would need to do it, it's easiest on them and actually the hardest on the person going through it. It's like, it is literally, it's like, it's selfish to the point of like, oh, well, the person that wants to, that would have to be responsible, at least we're taking the responsibility away from them while making it miserable to the person going through it.
yeah, and it's, that I will say that I'm not what I wouldn't label myself like anti-gun, but I do recognize the idea that it's much easier to squeeze physically to squeeze a trigger while pointing something in the desired direction and then have it go bang than it is to, I don't know how else to say this, to intimately kill someone, like stabbing somebody several times. You're much more in touch with what you are doing when you do one versus the other. I don't advocate killing people either way, not murder, but it's that, one of those ways it requires less physical effort. So therefore you may not feel the weight of what you've done at that moment. Later on, you probably will.
Yes, and honestly, I think there's a lot of data to support that. People that come from the military and were drone pilots really struggle with that. At the moment, they are basically playing a video game. They're looking at a screen, pressing a button, and then apparently months, weeks, whatever time later, they really get hit with the impact of what actually happened. And they're so taken away from that moment that it is very different than, like you're saying, any sort of hands-on violent situation is dealt with emotionally at that moment. For it's interesting. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and I think that people that have kind of, anyone that has quote pulled the plug on somebody, that later on it's the same thing. They might recognize what actually was done to that person. And my mother and I have actually had this conversation, her being a nurse and her seeing the things that people go through and the way that people end up and not wanting to kind of go out that way, as they say. My oldest sister, I believe, is in charge of basically fucking everything. All of the stuff, legal shit involving anything with my mom. I am the plug puller of the family. So I, as the discussion went, I will be legally responsible for making that call. Because she just knows the kind of person that I am. I try to do what makes sense, even if it's hard.
Yeah.
It's very much the Frank Underwood mentality, like the one that can do the difficult thing that's necessary. And yeah, I agree that may be the worst thing we can do, because even if the person is like a vegetable, so to speak, I think vegetable is actually the medical term.
Yeah, I think it's accepted.
If the person's a vegetable,
vegetative state, I think, is the actual term. Yeah, so I think you're right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Then is there a debate there that maybe they may or may not kind of feel it? I mean, maybe not. I don't know, but who knows? So let's just do the thing that really is the least painful.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard a word, or have you ever heard an oxymoron so strong as humane killing?
Microsoft works.
There you go. That's true. It's that if you have to kill, do it in the least painful way. Yes. But killing itself, we don't think of as.
I want to make the distinction: in the least painful way for the one going through it. Don't do what's the least painful for you because you're scared to do. Least painful for the person that actually has to endure it. Yeah.
Yeah, have some courage, have some grit. Do the difficult thing that is the best of the other. And in this situation, I mean, there's times where people have an unhealthy tendency to put others before themselves. And in this situation, I think this is not only acceptable and perfectly healthy, but I think that it's the right thing. Yeah. So this is something that it's one of those moments where you have a conversation with someone accepting some kind of responsibility, just the one as far as my mom telling me that I'm the one that's got to make that fucking call. That it's easy now because I'm like, oh, that'll never fucking happen. But then in the moment, it's like everybody
bridge that has to actually cross. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I want to think that I would be the one German that would be like, this Adolf guy, he seems like he's full of shit. I want to think that I'm the one Jew that's like, maybe we shouldn't kill this Jesus guy. I want to think that I'm the most courageous, the most noble. I'll always do the right thing, that I'll be Mr. Hero when, someone tries to mug that person outside the grocery store. But who knows? I might just be the coward that I don't want to admit that I am. So maybe if I'm in this situation, all this talk about doing the right thing, maybe I'll just do the wrong thing and be a coward about it myself, Who knows? So recognizing that about myself, even if I'm a hypocrite, I still think that's the right thing to do. So whether or not I'm able to, change it round to like, I don't know. I mean, I don't really know what choice do I have. Like
True.
I can't. There's no medically acceptable method.
True.
Yep.
Hey,
I'll write a letter to my senator.
That did cover all of my. Well, I've got like 3 or 4 notes that are still like unhighlighted, but they're like do we really need to talk about the rum raisin the wig? that was one of my notes. That's not something we need to go into.
It was kind of funny, but yeah, it's been mentioned.
But no, I do think. I mean, honestly, like the one big thing is like in the beginning, I do think that it is funny that they were bringing up that there are European countries, even in the 90s, that were already starting to look at this. And the one thing that Kevorkian even says is it's way too puritanical here. That's the reason why we haven't. And it does like, I mean, again, it may be my bias, and maybe the bone to pick that I have with religion, but it does just seem like it is our, even though our First Amendment tries to give us not an organized religion, it just seems like we are like fundamentally Christian at some point, and we have to like align with these Christian ideals. But
I also think that the reason why many times this episode I said Western or like American or Westernized Christianity, when in this instance I meant far West, like U.S. It seems that there's not all, but there's many Europeans who consider themselves some kind of Christian that temper that belief a little bit, that it's not some crazy like and in my opinion misguided version of Christianity. I'm fairly certain, and I might be wrong, but I'm fairly certain that the Torah, like the first 5 books of the Old Testament, that Jewish people don't take that literally. That
I'm pretty sure.
The people that Christians stole their religion from, them.
Yeah. The OGs.
Yeah, the original cultural appropriation, my people. And in my opinion, when you take every word literally, you actually rob it of almost all of its value.
Yeah.
Because the work's a hell of a lot more clever, particularly the old part.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a lot more clever than people give it credit for. That we have this certain brand of the whole idea of religious right. I'm not sure where else that exists. I'm interested to actually look at some European politics in other countries that are predominantly Christian to see if they have this religious right idea that exists there. But yeah, I mean, we have a different version, a different brand of it. That's just a little bit more nuts. It's distinctly American, and Americans, I think, we can be an intense culture.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where a lot of that stuff kind of it goes in that sort of extreme, sort of intense kind of way. Like, this is how we do it here. But yeah, I agree with you that there is something that is unique about the brand of Christianity here. That there is Christianity in many other European countries, but there is this tempering with like reality.
Yeah.
With actually putting thought into the things that you think and you believe. And I'm sure there's plenty of people who are pretty dogmatic in European countries, but I think that they're more of them. Not as much of a majority as it seems like we have here.
At least from the outside of Europe, that's the impression that I get. But yeah,
right, yeah, and there might even be like a bias that it seems like every group seems to think that they're under attack and nobody else is.
True.
So
the victim complex of being human.
Right.
Yeah.
Perhaps that and also because I grew up in the 90s, there was a lot bigger presence that the sort of like religious right, as we call it, was much stronger than.
Well, exactly. We had to deal with like growing up with magic as a hobby. We had to deal with that being like demonized by Christians as like, oh, this game is evil and stuff. Like, all
of the music I listened to is devil music, and Marilyn Manson was a Satan worshiper and all this other stuff. So like there was a lot of stuff that like we grew up in, maybe we have this perception that that religious right type of thing is stronger in the U.S. than it actually is.
Honestly, I would argue the original cancel culture. I don't want to, honestly,
Margot got canceled. Somebody fired her because she was Dr. Kevorkian's sister.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. I do think it's funny that term has become, in today's United States, that is like a dog whistle from the right saying that the left is overreaching very often. And it's like, I just think that humans do that a lot. We find something we disagree with and we don't want them to have a voice. Like, I don't think it's a left or right thing. I think it's just like humans fucking do that. It's wrong when from either side. It's wrong. Like, just stop fucking doing that.
Yeah. I really disagree with you, so you don't get to speak. Oh, dude, I wrote like a 3 sentences here about that scene with the plastic thing on the guy or whatever.
Yeah,
and the wife and all that.
Hugh Gale. Yeah.
I just wrote this whole. I don't know how I typed this whole thing out of my smartphone and still watched the movie, but this what happens with this lady, you can see how distraught she is emotionally. That scene, what she's doing is, I wrote here, it's caring about someone and not wanting to let them go, but realizing that they get to say when they want to die.
Yeah.
That caring for them means to let them have what they believe is best for them, even if it's painful for you.
And I love
that is something.
That was powerful, and I love that, like, that even I don't know if this happened in reality, but the fact that there was like a discrepancy with that report, and there had to be like almost, it wasn't an actual court case, but there was like a judicial hearing where that wife had to then sit and answer to a lawyer like what really happened, and still like was just telling the truth of like, no, this is what happened. I disagreed, but this is what my husband wanted, and I believe he had the right to choose. Like, I love when people can just be logically consistent and stick with something even when it's not what is comfortable to them and not what they wanted.
Yeah, and I've dealt with this thing. There was even a moment where I said to my mother, one of her sisters, quit. She had diabetes and renal failure and all kinds of other shit, that just a very bad kind of almost synergistic illness effect going on, and she decided to quit dialysis. And I had this conversation with my mother. I was 22, maybe 23, and I just said, at a certain point, it's going to be selfish for us to want her to stay around. We're wanting this for our own reasons. Yep. I don't know why I didn't mention that earlier. That may be more significant than my cat, but priorities. Oops. That I realized at a young age that it was us wanting something, but not necessarily for our benefit only, and not for that other person. Yeah. And I don't think my mom was being selfish and thinking that she wanted my aunt to stay around for her benefit, but it's just a point that I made. Yeah. Maybe for myself more than for her. That I just said, at a certain point, it's just going to be such of us. Yeah. So, you and I remember when she started with hospice care, I walked into there was a garage, and you walked into sort of a counter, and there was like the kitchen area, and on the kitchen cabinet there was this thing I'd never seen before, and it's 3 capital letters, DNR, and I didn't even know what that meant, and I looked closely at it, and the harsh reality set in that if this person stops breathing, this is not what they call a code in medicine. Yep. This is a DNR. This is let them die. Yep. Like, no chest compressions, don't breathe for them. Yep. None of that. And I was like, wow, this is fucking real. Like, this person wants to die. Like, that she's volunteered to die. Like, she's given up on this thing. It's now worth dying. Yeah. And I was just like, God damn it, I'm in my early 20s. Like, I don't understand it.
I know, right? Shit. Yeah.
It's like,
I'm supposed to be having fun at a bar right now.
Yeah. But yeah, and there's still plenty of shit I'm lost on in my 30s. So
Of course.
But I at least know it now.
There'll be plenty of shit we'll be lost on until we're 70, man. It's you know, lost is the human condition, which I do think is very interesting. That is like what especially with Janet Adkins at the very beginning, that is like what he hearkened on, is like what her fear is. Like that is a even though like we just joked about that's the human condition, like that is a terrifying thing of just actually being lost, like losing who you are, losing your identity. Like that is that yeah, that's where yeah, I will advocate for people to make this choice, even if they're not terminally ill, if they are just disabled to a point where it's not going to change. Like, yeah.
Well, I don't know about you, dude, but I am very much looking forward to doing 2 weeks of action films now.
Yeah, me too, man. Let's lighten it up. But here, let's lighten it up a little bit right now. Who is your movie crush from this one? This can be lighter.
Like, okay, I'm gonna have to darken it up and then lighten it up again.
Oh, okay.
So all these crushing feelings that I've talked about, like waking up and be like, oh my god, I'm gonna die, and like having to let family members go. Like I had a similar crushing feeling when I was like, oh god, I have to come up with a movie crush for this movie.
Me too. It was not easy.
I was like, who could it be? I mean,
I have an obvious answer if it's actor. Like, I mean, Susan Sarandon's just a gem. You know, I mean that as an actress, yeah, she's just fucking awesome. Yeah.
This was a hard one to figure out, and right now, I still don't know what the hell I'm gonna say, because it's like.
Do you want me to go first? Then?
I don't know, man.
I've got one.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
sure.
I have an answer, but it's gonna be stupid, I think.
Well, I mean, I think my answer every week is stupid because I think so. I mean, you guys know I'm like. I've got to be on the spectrum at some point. Like, I just take everything completely literally, and what I've convinced myself that crush means is just someone that I want to spend time around. Like, I mean, I've had the quote unquote boy crushes. You know, like I don't have a sexual attraction to men, but I've had that experience of what you would call like a man crush, where it's like, oh, that person seems really cool. I would like to get to know them more. Like. So I do think that my crush for this is Jack Kevorkian. I think that the way that Pacino portrayed him, but God, I've stumbled on that like 5 times this episode. The way that Pacino portrayed him was fucking great. It seemed like the kind of guy that I would like to sit and talk with. He had enough candidness that, you know, he didn't bullshit around. He seemed like we talked about, he was a creator, he was a musician, he painted, he did stuff, like just seems like the kind of dude that I would like to sit and get to know. And that was hard not to pick John Goodman too, because Neil was awesome too. But
oh yeah, John Goodman's good in like everything. I haven't seen a film with him in it that I didn't think was fucking excellent. Okay. Did you ever see Death Sentence with Kevin Bacon in it?
That does not sound familiar at all. No.
I think it's a remake, but John Goodman is in that, and he plays a really awesome character. I really recommend it. So before I give you my answer. Do you know what Adam Driver's character's name was in the movie?
Ooh,
I'm looking at it now, so I'm cheating, but
I looked it up last night because I wanted to verify that it was actually Adam Driver. But I don't remember. Glenn Stetson. Yeah, like the cologne. Yes. Yeah.
If that's not like the most, you know. Wow, I have a crush on that name.
That is a very Chad name. Chad Wolf and Glenn Stetson in John Wick 5.
Yeah, it's like was it Tug Speedman from Tropic Thunder?
Yeah.
Okay. I think I'm cheating a little bit.
That's fair.
But my movie crush is Barbara Walters.
Okay, that's a good. You know, honestly, dude, I picked a cat one episode. I think cheating's fine, man. Like I picked you. Oh shit, that episode hasn't come out yet. Fuck, I forgot. That's a bank episode. We spoiled the illusion.
Edit it out. It didn't happen. Bleep all this. Bleep all of it. Yeah, Barbara Walters, man. Grew up watching Barbara Walters on TV. You know, I think it's cool that's an anchor that actually had like kind of a speech impediment, but that became her trademark.
Yep.
You know, the same way Arnold, everyone's like, that accent's never going to sell. Well, boy, were you wrong. And I think that's really cool. I always enjoyed watching her on TV when I was a kid. And dude, when Barbara Walters was young, oh my God.
Yeah, no, yeah, she was a very beautiful woman. I'll give you that.
Yeah. And
Well,
there's just something about like the personality, like everything about Barbara Walters is cool.
so I mean, that means that I have to ask you a question. If you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be? you know that's like the stereotypical Barbara Walters question, right? Like that is the meme for.
I didn't know that, but that's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, that's like I don't know if that only came from one interview where she asked that or if she asked that multiple times, but that has become the Barbara Walters meme of like if you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be?
I just decided to look Barbara Walters up really quick since I mentioned her. The irony is unbearable. There is some speculation that she may have Alzheimer's.
Oh, really? That's
We're
interesting.
talking about dementia in certain people who might be at the point where they want, and that is wow, that's some heavy shit. Let me dedicate this episode to Barbara Walters.
This is the saddest headline I've ever read. I just Googled Barbara Walters and it's like the headline is it the end? Lonely Barbara Walters spends 91st birthday by herself.
Well, that's terrible. God damn it. We were trying to bring it up a little bit. Fuck.
Yeah. According to an OK source, yeah, she's in bad shape, discloses the source, adding that no guests came to her apartment to mark the milestone. She seems lonely and spends most of her time alone. More than 4 years after slipping into hiding, Barbara Walters, yeah, she's not doing well right now. That's rough.
Oh, I'd hang out with Barbara Walters. Yo, Barbara, hit me up for 92.
Right? That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I want to change my crush too. Barbara, you do not need to spend time alone. I'd love to talk with you.
Okay, I'll bring some biryani and a box of white Zinfandel.
That's a party, dude.
Together. Yeah.
All right. Now I know we can lighten it up. Well, maybe favorite line. I went straight up meme status like we've done in the past. This is a serious fucking movie, and I chose a joke of a fucking line. So hopefully we could bring it up a little bit. Did you choose a heavy line or did you choose a funny one too?
I chose a funny one that I at my core believe is the truth.
We 100% picked the same line. As soon as they said it, I knew that this spoke to your soul too.
Oh yeah, we did.
Yep. I knew that it did. Well, go ahead and you deliver it first. Go for it.
Okay. All right. I don't even know if I can do this. Pacino's such a good actor. All right. Unique New York. All right. No. Decaf is for cowards.
Yep. Perfect. I knew it. I fucking knew it. So I will. Okay. In full disclosure, that was the line I picked. I will deliver my second favorite though, because this is also fucking hilarious and cracked me up. I think this was the hardest laugh I had in the movie. Actually, hold on. I should do it. Let me do it with this.
Dr. Kevorkian's, this is Debbie.
I loved John Goodman delivering that. I don't know why it cracked me up that much. It was such a throwaway line, but the fact that he just picked up the phone and was like, Dr. Kevorkian's, this is Debbie. Like,
that was actually really funny. It took me a second. I was like, oh shit, John Goodman said that. Yeah, that was really funny at the moment, that especially like with the sort of kind of strange interplay that not interplay, like the dynamic that they had, the two of them. Like, yes, sir, what's best, sir thing, and then picking it up as if I'm your administrative assistant.
Yeah,
sir.
John Goodman's just a fucking man. I loved the what was it? You remember those two nurses we were dating? Oh yeah, that was me, not you. He had a few good ones in this. Yeah, John Goodman's a fucking legend. Well, guys, next week we are going to be back with Mortal Kombat. A completely missed opportunity. How did I deliver it that way? I'm sorry. Excuse me. Next week we'll be back with Mortal Kombat. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. I'm actually excited.
Don't get that joke.
I'm
Me
excited
too.
to
I'm
see this
excited about
movie,
it.
man. Like I, as bad as they were, I loved the first two from the '90s or whatever. They're so cheesy, but just so fucking funny. Like it's
Annihilation was great. The little robots were in there. That's the only reason there was to watch that. Like
True.
Jax has metal arms and the robot guys are in it.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. The fact that Cyrax smoke. Yeah. Oh my god. So I mean, it is almost impossible to do video game movies well. It's very, very rare. They're normally really bad. So I don't have super high expectations going into this, but I'm pumped to see it. So Lee, are you pumped for it, dude? Dude, please watch Mortal Kombat over the next week and hang out next week and discuss it with us. I really want to hear your opinions on it.
Dude, you can be a fucking guest if you want to.
True. I know you own a mic and a webcam. I've seen them. I have seen you stream Minecraft and things like that. Hell yeah. Yeah, it is it's going to be, when does it actually release on HBO? It'll be on HBO Max. What day was that? The 28th maybe? Or no, I'm sorry. 28th is when we're doing it.
I think it's like this weekend. I think it's the 23rd or 24th.
Release HBO. I think you're right. Yep, Friday the 23rd. You are right.
Cool.
Well, dude, Lee, you are always welcome to be a guest if you feel up to it, man. If not, I love having you in chat. But yeah, like hopefully if you're into watching Mortal Kombat, you'll be here next week and talking about it. But guys, that is going to bring us to the end of another episode of the Metacast Movie Show. If you are watching this on YouTube and you've enjoyed our discussion, please hit the like button, subscribe to keep up to date, and comment below. Tell us how you felt about You Don't Know Jack. And actually, no, tell us your opinions on assisted suicide. I'd rather hear that, since this episode is more about that.
If you do know Jack, or if you want to further keep up to date or even join us as a guest on a future episode, please join our Discord. The link is in the description below. We will be live next week on Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on twitch.tv/TylaTV.
Thank you everyone for listening, and I hope you all have a great week.